Welcome to Buffalo Rumblings Live. My name is Matt Warren, even though my name tag isn't working down here. I'm joined tonight by Brian Galliford, the editor-in-chief of Buffalo Rumblings. Brian, it's been a while. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Matt?
If you could tell from the bags under my eyes, my wife is still pregnant. We have not had our son yet, but she's at that really fun stage where like every couple hours during the night, she has to get up and move around so that the baby goes back to sleep inside of her. And so I haven't been sleeping very well, but, them's the breaks. Am I right? Anyway. The Bills,
sure.
The Bills, Brian, with his extensive knowledge of that particular piece of information. But
really well versed in that.
Let's move on to something that Brian is a little bit more comfortable with, and that's the Buffalo Bills. You're like an expert on the Bills from what I hear. And I'm assuming you watched the game against Detroit this weekend?
I did. It was enjoyable.
Well, my wife disagreed with that when I told her that tonight, in fact. She's like, you were miserable for most of that game. And I'm like, yeah, that probably sounds like me. We were complaining about refs and laser pointers. Well, we didn't know it was laser pointers until after the game. But there was a lot of stuff to not like about that game, but sometimes you got to win ugly. I can't remember who said that. I think it was C.J. Spiller or Fred Jackson that said after the game that it doesn't really matter how you win as long as you win, and that's really what it comes down to, right?
Yeah, a win is a win is a win, and it was ugly. I think the low point of ugliness would have been the pick six, the Kyle Orton pick six. That produced from me a fluid stream of excrement coming from my mouth, basically, and my mother was appalled at the things I was saying in her living room. But it was all uphill from there, mercifully. No, it was a good game. It was a good second half, let's put it that way. And it's the type of win that they need to have, particularly because it was a road game and against, I think the Lions are a really good team. If you dig out wins like that 3-4 times a year, you dramatically increase your chances of going to the playoffs. So that's a win they had to have. It's not the prettiest thing. A lot of people will question whether or not it was deserved, but it happened. They're 3-2, and we'll see what this week brings.
Yeah, the Lions really billsed that one away as I was writing pretty much the whole time in the second half. And it's a game, when we use that term, bills, it's a game that the Bills have been on the wrong side of a lot and made enough mistakes down the end of the second half to actually. There's Alec, who's going to be on with us a little bit later. But they made enough mistakes, the Lions did, to let the Bills back in the game, and the Bills took advantage of it, which is something that they haven't done in the past. And that Kyle Orton interception, it's I don't know if you thought this, but I'm like, oh no, people are going to start clamoring for EJ again. It didn't happen right away, which is merciful. Thank you, guys. I'm glad you were level-headed about it. What did you studied the defensive line today and the pass rush and things like that. What did you see from them they're leading the league in so many statistical categories, and Marcel Darius had 3 sacks, and Jerry Hughes is living in the backfield. What did you see from the defensive line that you have really liked so far?
Dominance, I think, would be a good answer for that. I mean, they really took it to Detroit's offensive line, specifically the left side. Hughes had his way with Riley Reiff, and Darius was all over. Rob Sims, the left guard, kind of ate him for lunch a little bit. It was it's fun to watch those guys work together, Hughes and Darius, that is. They're excellent at what they do in terms of rushing the passer. Darius is unfairly skilled, and Hughes has really come along in his development. And, that's half of a defensive line that, frankly, it would not be completely shocking if they had 4 guys pushed for Pro Bowl consideration. They're off to a great start up front, and Detroit's not the greatest offense in terms of what they've done through the first 5 games, but they're as good a measuring stick as they've had this season beyond San Diego, and they acquitted themselves very well.
Okay. Did you think that the absence of Kyle Williams was felt?
No, and I say that only because Marcel Darius picked up the slack. If he had played at his normal level, which is very good, it probably would have been felt, as well as Stephon Charles played, and Corbin Bryant had some moments as well. it's Kyle Williams. If he's out of the lineup, you kind of feel it. But Darius was so out of this world good in that game that no, they didn't miss him in this contest. And obviously, you can't expect that level of play from Darius on a week-to-week basis. So the sooner that Kyle's back, the better. But no, they didn't miss Williams one bit. It's probably good that he sat out a week and rested up.
Let's stay on the defensive side of the ball really quickly. Nigel Bradham, we still haven't heard what his status is for this Sunday, but Preston Brown has seen an awful lot of snaps this season, and you'll notice him in the passing game, but he hasn't really been that big of a liability for being a rookie third-round pick, has he?
Well, I mean, if you're going to add that qualifier, probably not, but yeah, he's been a liability.
Okay.
Clearly their biggest liability in terms of linebackers that are on the field a lot. But I mean, he's very good against the run, especially if you're adding that qualifier back in. He's a good football player. He's got some upside, and I think he's very clearly the middle linebacker of the future. I don't think they're going to re-sign Brandon Spikes, for example. They'll just roll with him next year. But yeah, in terms of coverage, he is a clear liability, and that's why they don't really have better options this year with Kiko Alonso out, but it's good experience for him, and it'll give them options going into the 2015 season at that position.
Well, you talked about how they weren't going to re-sign Brandon Spikes, or at least that's your opinion.
Right now it is.
But he was out there on the nickel package this past Sunday. Was that something that surprised you when you went back and looked at the All-22?
Yeah, a little bit. They've done that from time to time this season, and I think a lot of it had to do with they just wanted Keith Rivers off the field. He was really just a strict base defense guy, and I think they're just kind of mixing and matching to see what their best pass coverage linebacking group is, especially with Bradham out of the lineup. So, once Bradham's back in the lineup, it's going to be him and Brown on nickel situations. So, really, it's kind of a toss-up between Rivers and Spikes, and I don't think anyone, after what Rivers did at the end of that Texans game, not touching Arian Foster down, was going to miss him much in that game. And Spikes, he's a liability in coverage, but he actually, he was pretty average in that department on Sunday.
Okay, Brian Galliford, editor-in-chief of BuffaloRumblings.com. Let's talk about the offense. Kyle Orton starts for E.J. Manuel. What do you think that Kyle Orton brought that E.J. Manuel couldn't? Or maybe that's the wrong way to put it. What did Kyle Orton bring to this game to allow them to win?
I kind of liked the way you put it first, actually.
Okay.
It was easier to answer. He brought anticipation.
Okay.
He was throwing guys open and anticipating things unfolding in the secondary. These were just basic stuff that Manuel was not hitting, and Orton was seeing it faster and getting the ball out there. I don't think it was any more accurate than Manuel had been. Sammy Watkins had to make some insanely good catches there at the end of the game to put him in field goal territory. But he knows where to go with the football, and that's a step up. And that's the answer. He was the difference, frankly, in the game. There was a difference between he and Stafford. Orton outplayed Matt Stafford in that contest. I think maybe even by a considerable margin. I mean, when he's completing 70% of his passes and still throwing it over 40 times, he's doing something right. And it was just the type of game that they need from their quarterback position when they're not running the football particularly well. He was efficient. He was regular. He kept the chains moving. And it was just a good performance.
Yeah, even on like some really long plays when they got behind the eight ball with penalties on first and second downs, you never felt like it was completely hopeless that they were going to get the first down. That Chris Hogan pass, I think it was 2nd and 25 or something. Was that?
It just completely froze on me. You were stuck. There was like this freeze frame of your face, and you looked incredibly bored. So I apologize for boring.
It's okay. No, but there was that long, like I think it was 2nd and 25 to Chris Hogan that they picked up, I think 15 or 18 yards on, and then Fred Jackson got the rest on the next play. Maybe it was 1st and 25. It was after a couple of penalties, and it never felt like it was hopeless with Orton in there, and you may have felt that way in the past. It helps that they didn't run the ball up the middle, but Bills of Erie asks you specifically, did he leave you optimistic for the rest of the year, Orton?
Sure. I mean, yeah, if they have that level of quarterback play on a consistent basis, then sure, they can compete with any team in the league, I think, especially with the way their defense is playing. And I think the key word there is consistency. They were not going to get consistency out of Manuel they can get that from Orton simply because he's been in the league. He's seen pretty much every defensive look you can throw at him. I think that's the key. If they can get him playing at that level at a consistent clip for the rest of the season, then yeah, they absolutely can push for a playoff spot.
Oh, P word. Okay. I had other questions lined up. Buffberg Adelphia. I was pleased as punch that the Bills actually completed a deep pass this week to Goodwin. Is this a sign of the offense finally opening up, or is it Orton making the difference? I heard he could throw it over mountains if he wanted to.
It's a one-play sample size, and they had thrown a couple times or at least one time to Goodwin deep earlier. I think in this case, it's Orton. I mean, they're still running the same offense. It's a lot of shorter underneath stuff. They're kind of a ball control passing game at the moment, but I mean, obviously they're going to have to be able to stretch the field vertically to loosen defenses up and to continue to run the football effectively. So yeah, I mean, the more they hit those passes and the more they come close, it's the better for the offense.
Dan Lavoie asked a couple different questions about E.J. Manuel that I just want to touch on while we're talking about quarterbacks. Do you have any opinion at all about the oddly formed response about Jimbo Fisher not telling scouts that E.J. Manuel was a good quarterback prospect or something along those lines? Do you care about any of that?
I vaguely recall hearing about it on game day, but I didn't really pay attention to it.
Okay. And then he asked about the report that said that there were serious mental mistakes, including stepping the wrong number of times in his dropbacks, which led to his benching. Did you hear about that report?
I think I read. Did J2 read a fan post about that? Yeah, he wrote a fan post about that. Yes, I read some of that. It came from Jeremy White, right, at GR.
It must have. I remember seeing the title of the fan post.
Yeah, that's ringing a louder bell for me. And I mean, I did notice some of the protection stuff that was discussed. They had guys running free far too frequently, and I think, I mean, when you notice that, you kind of assume that some of it is the quarterback and not seeing things correctly in pre-snap. But I mean, that's all stuff that has to come out of the organization, and I think it's more interesting that someone in the team is talking crap sort of about Manuel than the actual crap being talked.
I understand.
Put it that way.
It's not the content, it's the fact that it's happening at all. Got it.
Exactly.
So some of those things were certainly fixed because Kyle Orton was in the game instead of E.J. Manuel, but Nick Jack Goodboy asks, do you think that it made a difference that Nate Hackett was back up in the booth as opposed to being on the field?
I mean, listen, we are in the year 2014. I'm pretty sure if Nate Hackett is standing on the sideline, he can get some images from up in the sky to see the all-22 angle. I mean, I don't really understand the focus on that. I think he came down. I mean, if it's a comfort thing, I think he's more comfortable up in the booth. He started there last season. He's back there now that Manuel's on the bench, and he came down because Manuel was more comfortable with him on the sideline. I think it's, just in terms of game day function, I think it's 6-1, half a dozen to the other.
Okay, so moving completely away from the offense, but staying in the coach's booth, is Jim Schwartz a douche?
Yes. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
That question came from Luke Hurton. I never thought I'd say that word on Buffalo Rumblings Live or really on any marginally televised TV show like this one is. But Golden Tate called him a douche today. For those of you that haven't heard, Golden Tate did not play for Jim Schwartz in Detroit. But upon hearing that Jim Schwartz told his players to pick him up and carry him off the field should the Bills win, Golden Tate, of course, said that. And my reaction was initially pretty similar. I wasn't going to go and call him names and stuff like that, but I wasn't a huge fan that Jim Schwartz was like, yeah, guys, carry me off the field after we win. Now, obviously, I don't know the context, and that's kind of difficult, but I got roundly criticized on Twitter for being part of the No Fun League, but whatever. I just think that that's kind of a special thing to do, and to ask someone to do it like that is, I don't know, a little bit crappy. But.
I mean, we're talking about a team that has not made the playoffs in 14 and a half.
And they still haven't.
And a half, and their defensive coordinator is being carried off the field after a 17-14 win in which the other team missed 3 field goals. It's lame, people. It is a lame thing for a team to do. And listen, Golden Tate is also a tremendous douchebag, and that's not debatable. And I should say that I've never met Jim Schwartz, never spoken with him. So I don't know him as a man. He seems like a very smart person. He's obviously a hell of a football coach, but even if it's just like a passing joke thing that ended up, the players taking it out of context and actually doing it, it's kind of ridiculous.
I could see it totally being a joke. Like, they're sitting over there like peas and carrots at the, at the chow line and at St. John Fisher and talking about it. Like, guys, I want to beat the Lions so bad that you guys pick me up and carry me off on your shoulders. Now, obviously, they didn't do that. They didn't beat them so bad that you would want to do that. But I can totally see that happening. All right,
and let's say this too. He was enjoying himself out there. He was clearly having a good time. So
Absolutely.
That's something to factor in as well.
And I still think it's funny you saw some Lions players walk up to him and shake his hand while he's on the Bills players' shoulders, which that was probably the funniest part for me. All right, I got some quick hitters from Ron. How was Orton not killed by the Detroit defensive line? What did the Bills do on offense?
They protected better, and Kyle Orton threw the ball quicker.
I think, that it wasn't, Ron further asking the question, it wasn't due to all pre-snap read quick passes, but he hit some slower developing routes as well. He absolutely did. The Bills were just able to pick him up a little bit better, and part of that is because they benched C.J. Spiller for whiffing on pass protection. And so when you see Fred Jackson in there doing pass pro, that's going to help, I would think. Have you heard anything about Kyle Williams coming back this week?
No, we'll know more tomorrow. The Bills practice at noon, just after noon, so it's probably 2:30 or so when they'll have injury updates.
So Ron asked about a lot of other guys, and so those injury updates go for everyone else. I'd be shocked if Ron Brooks plays this week. I'd also probably be surprised if Kyle Williams or Nigel Bradham played, knowing what the kind of rumors that were swirling around were that they were going to be out for a couple weeks. Last Ron question. Will Terry Pagula or Kim Pagula say a few words before the game? They're going to be introduced. We know that, but Ron asked you. That's what folks have been saying. That they said there was going to. Russ Brandon even alluded to it, that there was going to be something before the game on Sunday. I can't remember exactly what he said now. I saw it, Monday morning, but he said something along those lines. Not that necessarily they'd be introduced. I mean, they've been to all the home games this year. They've just been in their little box with the glass. So, or at least the kids have. They keep posting the Twitter images of going to the Bills game. So I would assume that they're going to be there.
That would be nice. I mean, we're not going to hear much from them this week, probably.
Right.
But yeah,
there is going to be
it would be nuts if they did something at the stadium. The crowd would go insane.
There is going to be a press conference at some point. We don't know if it's going to be this week or next. As a refresher, it's going to be Wednesday morning at 8:30 a.m. when the owners vote on Terry Pagula. It's expected to be unanimous, with all of John Bon Jovi's friends voting for Terry Pagula. Eat it, John. And then there's going to be a little bit of a press conference there in New York City, according to guys like Joe Biscaglia and a few other the TV guys that I saw reporting from New York City, which I didn't expect them to be down there on Monday getting ready, but all of them have been. And then at some point later this week or early next week, there will be a press conference with Terry and Kim Pagula. One interesting thing I saw today was that it's expected that Terry Pagula is going to get the voting power. You can't have joint owners, and so only one of them gets voting power in the NFL, and it's supposed to be Terry, whereas we had heard that it was, Kim was going to take a more hands-on approach. Some thought that she was going to be the one that was voting. I don't know if you saw any of that stuff today about the Pagulas.
I didn't see anything about her being the voting entity. But,
right, she's not going to be, is essentially what that was saying.
And I never saw anything about that beforehand either.
Oh, okay.
That division of power makes sense to me.
And then the last thing, Peter King of the MMQB at Sports Illustrated said today that they're looking at a new downtown stadium and creating a huge Pagulaville near the arena right now. Is that something that's attractive to you, Brian Galliford?
Sure. Why not? I mean, it'd be kind of cool to have stadiums, Sabres and Bills stadiums, near each other downtown. It would obviously it would make sense financially for the Pagulas. They would rake in some serious dough doing that. It'd also be an expensive venture. I think that's just, again, I mean, they're tied into this lease through the end of the 2022 season. That will probably act as sort of a soft deadline for all this, and we're talking about 8 years. So it's a long time out, and I mean you're going to start hearing stuff about it, but I'm just kind of in wait and see and enjoy the moment mode with this
Right.
ownership thing.
I'm not really interested in talking about that stuff right now. I mean, people are going to be worried about their tailgating experience and all this other stuff, but there's going to be brand new stuff there if they do move there, and we'll of course find it once that happens. Brian, you're going to stick around while we talk to Alec Shane from Pat's Pulpit?
Sure, why not?
I mean,
may I drink beer while we do this?
That's perfectly fine with me. I'm not, but you certainly can. I mean, I think the only reason you wouldn't want to talk to Alex Shane from Pat's Pulpit is that he's a Patriots fan, and we don't like Patriots fans. Hi, Alec. How are you?
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, you're not a floating blue head this time.
Well, you figure, you start out mysterious, you build the aura, you build the mystique, and then you drop the elbow on him when you need to. That's kind of how I do it.
Oh, well, Patriots fans, I guess.
Indeed.
I don't know.
Let's take a quick little drink here. Sorry.
When we build the new Terry Pagula Stadium in downtown Buffalo, I want to put like one of those water slides in there, so when Tom Brady goes down it, he's going to go wee like that in that picture.
Understandable. Look, there are certain things that Tom Brady does that, on a lesser man, I'd criticize him, but he's just got the track record. And if you saw the woman at the bottom of that water slide waiting for him, I'd be going a lot more than wee. So You got to give him kind of a break there.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, let's just start with the kind of the bipolar Patriots here.
Yeah.
What's going on with the Patriots? They got blown out a week ago, and then this week they pretty much returned the favor to the Cincinnati Bengals. Is it really just in-week adjustments, or did they play horribly and then play great? What's going on with the Patriots?
I think you kind of touched on a lot of it, honestly. I think on Monday night against the Chiefs, that game was over by the second touchdown. There was just no energy. They were just flat. They didn't look like they were into it. And meanwhile, Kansas City was playing out of their minds, and I think all just steamrolled from there. And then coming up to that, just the media criticism you saw all week. You saw people, Tom Brady's done. That's what every time that happens, he's over the hill, he's washed up, and he still takes that very seriously. And so as things got worse and worse as the week progressed, you just knew there was no way they were going to drop 2 games in a row in prime time, one of which being at home, and they came out and they answered. It reminded me a lot, honestly, of the 2007 game against San Diego, the week after Spygate broke, and the Chargers came into town for a Sunday night game, and they just lit them up. They were all fired up. The crowd is into it. It was the same kind of statement game. But I also don't think that they're back the way everyone else is. They overreacted to the loss. They're overreacting to the win. That's kind of how the Patriots fan base rolls. They're very kind of fickle, and really whatever happened the last 5 minutes is how it's always been, how it always will be. So I think, honestly, what we're going to see on Sunday at Buffalo is kind of a combination of Monday and this past Sunday.
So, I mean, you're pretty much saying that they're vulnerable. They're not the same old Patriots that have whooped the Bills for the better part of a decade or longer.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, their offensive line was much better. I think they have their starting 5 combination in now. They've been swapping guys in and out all season so far. The guys on Sunday night really looked like they were good. The Nate Solder, Dan Connolly, Brian Stork, Ryan Wendell, Sebastian Vollmer lineup, that was a really good one, but there's still a lot of question marks. There's not really much in the receiver department. Gronk is still not 100%. Pass rush isn't great. Secondary solid, but when Revis got hurt, you see what happens there. So by no means am I sitting here seeing the victory on Sunday being like, well, all right, let's just wait till the AFC Championship game comes around. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed still, and I'm taking that win. I'm enjoying it. There's a lot more to do.
I'm glad you talked about the offensive line because several of our commenters asked about that. The Bills' defensive line, as Brian wrote today on BuffaloRumblings.com, has had a pretty nice season so far and a pretty nice game against the Detroit Lions. So even without Kyle Williams, they're going to present a little bit of a challenge for the Patriots' offensive line, which, well, I thought was in flux, but you say that they've solidified their line. What are they going to be able to do to slow down Buffalo's pass rush?
Well, what they did a lot against Cincinnati was they used a lot more 2 tight end sets. They utilized fullback James Devlin a lot more. They established the run finally, which blew my mind. It took them that long to do that. This is their first game all season. They didn't get a 3-and-out to start the game. They have very few receivers and a lot of running backs, and they still committed to the pass. And so they got Ridley going, which was huge. opened up the play action a lot more, and they brought in the more two tight ends to max protect, which helped a lot. And I wouldn't say that the O-line is solidified and we're completely good to go, but if you're constantly swapping guys in and out and playing with formations all season, I mean, that line needs to gel. They have to work together, and if you don't have the same guys in there, it's harder to do that. So hopefully this is their lineup. It's still going to take some time. I do think Buffalo will be successful at points against the Patriots. Especially the stadium's going to be loud. It's going to be a crazy, crazy game. It's always really close at Buffalo. Past couple seasons, it's been a field goal or less, I believe. And so I think there will be success in the defensive line of Buffalo, but it won't be like Kansas City where they're rushing two and still getting to Brady. You know, it won't be like that.
Well, they were able to do that against the Lions, and it's one of the reasons they had such success is that Marcel Darius was, man beasting people up, and even when he was taking on double teams, he was able to push guys back into Matthew Stafford and knock him off his spot or even get to him, and he sacked him 3 times, setting a career high. So that was one of the things that really worked well about Schwartz's defense. By the way, we lost Brian Galliford. His internet crept the bed as he texted me about a minute ago. It's probably...
I have that effect on people, honestly, I do.
Hey, well, anytime we talk about Patriots, we talk about crap. You know how it works.
Can't say I blame you.
So we're still talking about how our defense and the Patriots offense is going to work. And the Patriots have had this kind of super annoying tendency to establish a running game against the Bills. The Bills are, I believe, leading the league in rushing yards allowed per game this season. If the Bills are able to shut down the Patriots' running attack, how are the Patriots going to respond with the receiver core that is kind of depleted?
I mean, obviously, what we did see, what I liked out of Sunday night's game was the emergence of Tim Wright. He's the guy we traded for Logan Mankins in that 4th-round draft pick. He had a really good game, 5 for 85 and a touchdown, and only on the field for, I think, 21% of the snaps, 22% of the snaps around that. He was utilized a lot more. So if the Patriots can get back to that 2 tight end formation, not as blocking threats, but as receiving threats up the seam, Brandon Spikes is a great run stuffer, huge coverage liability. And with Kiko Alonso gone, that's where you guys are kind of weaker in the coverage linebacking area. So if we can exploit the middle of the field with Gronk and Tim Wright, and maybe get Edelman going on those quick little hook slant routes, we can kick up yards in chunks. Aaron Dobbs is not really the deep threat we're hoping he was, so there may not be kind of a deep threat over the top to keep the safeties honest. But if the coverage linebackers remain a problem with Buffalo, I can see the middle of the field being a great place for Brady to hit. Yeah,
rookie Preston Brown has been getting a lot of snaps in place of Kiko Alonso and Keith Rivers, who was out for a couple weeks at the beginning of the year. And then Nigel Bradham has been out for the last couple weeks. So our 3rd-rounders pick has been getting a lot of snaps. And he's been exploited in a lot of the passing game as they motion guys into areas. I mean, at one point he was covering, I can't even remember who it was. It might have been Keenan Allen, for the love of God, for the Chargers, that flashed through Preston Brown's zone, and then Preston Brown's supposed to run with that guy. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So they've been scheming ways to get guys like that open. I don't know. The Bills have sort of adjusted to that. That was 3 weeks ago, and things like that. But 3-2, the Bills versus the Patriots.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that the first place Bills would have to play the 1A Patriots now too? And
it's crazy.
It really is nice that this game actually means something, and it's not 0-5 Bills against the 5-0 Patriots and let's go get smoked. One of the big stories coming out of the Bills and Lions game was they were using laser pointers to distract the Bills holder on field goals, as well as the Bills quarterback Kyle Orton.
The fans were?
Yeah, the Lions fan, one Lions fan in particular. And then he tweeted about it. It was a big deal. We covered it really well. You should hop on over and look at it. But
will do.
Some people were asking what would happen if Tom Brady was shined in the eye with a laser pointer. Would they halt the game and jail every single Bills fan? Do you think?
I think what would happen actually is he'd fire some lasers right back out of both of his eyes and burn that guy a hole in the ground. That's what I think would happen.
Wow. I just when I look at Tom Brady, I still see the guy in that draft video with his shirt off.
Everyone does. I mean, the guy's got.
6th rounder.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny if that had been a Patriots fan that did the laser pointing, though, it would have just been a travesty, just the arrogance and just the disgusting. It was Bill Belichick scheming from the sidelines. They should ban him and find him a first-round draft pick. I don't condone it by any means, but I also do think that Brady would not be happy about it, and I'm sure we'd see plenty of camera sideline cuts of him angry on the sidelines about the laser pointing.
Yeah, we only saw one of Kyle Orton when he was actually on the field, and you could actually see the ref saying, "Well, what do you want us to do? Make an announcement?" It's like we can make an announcement saying that it's against the law, I guess. I mean, it's one of those things. I'm a teacher, right? And so it's one of those things that if it's impossible to enforce, you don't say anything, and they did it, so that's good.
That's funny.
Which one of your tight ends should we be focusing on this week? Asks Sergeant Major Thor.
Honestly, I would say Tim Wright, only because Gronk is Gronk. You know who he is. You know what he's capable of. He's still not back yet. He looked great, I think, against Cincinnati on Sunday, but he's still not getting quite the separation, not as fast as he once was. But he's not the kind of guy who's going to catch you by surprise. You know who he is at this point. Tim Wright's still kind of a question mark, kind of a mystery. He's also a lot more versatile. He's a move tight end. You line him up in the X slot. You put him in the backfield if you need to. So he's the kind of guy that represents that coverage mismatch. Kind of too big for a cornerback, too fast for a linebacker. And so I think he's the guy that would cause more problems from a matchup standpoint, at least.
All right, well, let's talk about how the Bills can attack the Patriots defense. They've got a lot of familiar faces on that defense, but they brought in Darrelle Revis this offseason. How has he kind of changed the way that the Patriots play defense?
What's funny, I don't think, honestly, he was used effectively until this past Sunday. They had him playing off-man. He wasn't allowed to press. He wasn't kind of just focused on the number one receiver and had to take him out of the game. They were playing a lot of combination man zone, soft maybe quarters coverage, and that's not really where he excels. Now, it might be because the young linebackers weren't quite getting to the passer quite the right way, or whatever it was. They really weren't using him enough, and they were so focused on finding the deep ball that he didn't really get to do what he does. You saw him against A.J. Green, pretty much dominated him the entire game, except for that one touchdown he was out for anyway. And so what I think that the Patriots are going to do with Darrelle Revis is put him on the number one guy, probably Sammy Watkins. I don't know. He's having a great season for rookie especially. Brandon Browner's back now with the first game as a number two corner. So a lot more press man coverage, a lot of leaving him alone. And what that will do is allow Belichick to dial up more creative pass rush schemes, because pass rushing is still a problem we have. We're not getting to the quarterback as much as we'd like to. Chandler Jones has a shoulder injury, so he's only down on passing downs right now. Easley has a shoulder injury, so who knows about that. So it's really all about allowing Revis and Browner hopefully to press the man, disrupt the routes, the passing routes, and go from there.
So if you were game planning against the Patriots defense, what would be your focus?
What I would do if I was the Bills, I would just give Fred Jackson the ball every single time. Because I don't know what it is about that man, but he just dominates New England every single time he plays them. Just rushes over guys, plows through them, screen passes for 80 yards. Just give him the ball every single time, and you're going to win, no matter what. I don't know what it is.
It's not just the Patriots. He does it to pretty much everyone.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the guy's just so underrated. And it drives me nuts. He's 33 now, which is remarkable for running back that he's still able to do this. And he's got to split carries with Spiller, and I don't think he ever got the credit he deserves. But other than that, what I really would do, honestly, is the Patriots linebackers aren't great in coverage either. If you can get Jackson going early, motion Spiller out wide, he's a huge coverage mismatch as a pass catcher. If he gets matched up on a Jamie Collins or a Gerard Mayo, he's going to outrun them, and he's really elusive in space. So I'd establish Fred Jackson early, get the run going, use the play action, use Spiller over the middle to exploit the linebackers.
I wish they would have been able to get the run going, because they haven't really been able to get the run going on first down a whole lot. At least this.
Are they running on first down?
They have been, especially earlier in the season. They were having some success on it, but I guess a lot of Bills fans, including myself, don't like the shotgun handoff where Orton or Manuel, whoever's the quarterback, takes the shotgun snap and then turns and hands it to the running back, who then runs into the middle of the line. It hasn't been working very well. Especially Spiller needs to get out in some space and instead of going east-west, if you do that, your first step is facing the quarterback to get the ball, or at least taking a step back so that the quarterback can turn and hand you the ball. So it just doesn't benefit Spiller, especially Fred Jackson. Like you said, he's powerful enough and has good enough vision and balance, especially the balance, where he can evade the first guy in the backfield if there's a guy in the backfield already. So I don't know.
No, yeah, I get it. Actually, the Patriots did that a lot too. They've been doing a lot with Vereen Moore. They haven't really been running Ridley at all the past couple weeks, except for on Sunday. And it's weird when you try to use your change of pace back, your pass catcher, your mismatch as like your primary between the tackles guy. I think it's just poor management. That's on the coaches.
Well, yeah, that's what a lot of our folks are saying. And Buff Bergadelphia, one of our commenters that's watching live here, said Spiller out wide. What an idea! Yeah, a lot of Bills fans are clamoring for the same thing, but they haven't been doing it in the offseason and in preseason. We saw Spiller and Jackson in the backfield at the same time, and I haven't looked at the plays close enough where, like as Brian has, or something like that. But I haven't seen a whole lot of them in the game at the same time. Maybe they were saving it for Patriots Day. I don't know. I don't know. Some folks have been saying that this is the reason they signed guys like Brandon Spikes and Corey Graham to come in and get the Bills over the top against a team like the Patriots. And it would be nice if that was the case. We'll have to see on Sunday. What questions do you have for us about Bills versus Patriots?
I mean, I guess the main thing I'm thinking about right now is will Kyle Williams be a go for Sunday, and if so, will that affect or change the kind of base defense you guys operate out of?
Most of the rumors that have been flying around, there's been nothing from the team because Doug Marrone has gone into this little, Belichickian cocoon where every time someone asks him about an injury, he looks at the director of media relations and then looks back at the reporter with the information. It's just like, whatever, guy, come on. But the rumors that have been floating around is that it was a multiple-week injury for Kyle Williams. I think it was Vic Carucci who said that it was going to be like a 2-week injury. So it wouldn't shock me if he was on the field, but I don't get the sense that he's going to be. We'll know a lot more tomorrow. I don't think it would change the base defense. It didn't a whole lot on Sunday when they were platooning in Stephon Charles and Corbin Bryant next to Marcel Darius. What it did change was how much Marcel Darius played. And when they have Darius and Kyle Williams next to each other, they can platoon guys next to them. And without Kyle Williams, they wanted to keep Darius in as much as possible. So the dude played 92% of the snaps. And I don't know if you remember in the offseason, one of the big things was Darius came in and failed his conditioning test when he got to training camp. And everyone made a big deal about it. And then he goes out and plays 92 snaps, has 3 sacks and a forced fumble. I mean, he was amazing. And I don't know if he'll be able to have that type of game again. And I know you were on when Brian and I were talking about that. He had an amazing game, and whether he's able to continue with that or if it was just a one-time, I need to get up because Kyle's not here, we'll have to wait and see on Sunday. But I don't think it's going to change their scheme necessarily because they think they've got some good penetrating defensive tackles, and they've done a pretty admirable job in Kyle's absence.
Cool. One name I haven't heard a lot of that I'm used to hearing a lot of is Scott Chandler. I think he's a great tight end. I think he's very underrated. I haven't been seeing a lot of him on the stat sheets. Has he not been showing up because just poor quarterback play? Is it strategy thing? Is it offensive scheme thing? What's his deal?
It has a lot to do with E.J. Manuel not being in the game. Kyle Orton found him a couple times last week, but so many of Manuel's throws were predetermined before the snap of the ball, in my opinion and in the opinion of a lot of other folks. Not being in the huddle, we can't know that 100% for sure, but if before the snap he's like, okay, you're supposed to go to Sammy Watkins on this play, he was probably going to Sammy Watkins, and that's one of the reasons that J.J. Watt was able to take that 80-yard interception return back, was that the call in the huddle was to throw it to Fred Jackson, so when Manuel backs up and throws the ball, well, Fred Jackson, there's a big dude by the name of J.J. Watt between you and Fred Jackson, don't necessarily throw it. So I think that's part of it, is that he's very rarely the primary read on a play, and so Manuel just never got to him. I think you might see more of him with Kyle Orton. Manuel found him on one big play the entire year, and it was on a busted coverage where he just had to find a friendly jersey and chuck it to him. So I think it's mostly quarterback play and scheme. I think they don't think he's a weapon enough where they're going to game plan for him.
Got it. Because I think he's another guy that always tends to do well against New England. He's always kind of finding a mismatch against a linebacker. He's a big guy and he's got good hands. So I guess it's a good segue into E.J. Manuel was benched obviously for Orton. General consensus around Buffalo, everyone's happy about this. And is E.J. Manuel kind of going to be on the bench for the foreseeable future, or is this kind of a temporary thing?
I think most people are happy with it. I don't know if it's a 100% consensus because a lot of folks wanted them to stick with the guy that could take them, has the higher ceiling, could take them further over the course of, say, the next 5 or 6, 7, 10 years. And even if it wasn't in win-now mode, a lot of Bills fans are in it for the long haul, whereas Doug Marrone really isn't right now. And so he needed to do a little bit to change it up. And I didn't have a problem with it. Some of the people around me were thrilled by the decision to bench E.J. Manuel. I'm surprised it happened so quickly. I understand why it happened so quickly, but I was just surprised that it happened after only 4 weeks, and especially because he had such a good opening 2 weeks. And they must have seen something. Maybe it's the first read thing that we were just talking about, that he wasn't ever progressing beyond his first read, and they just happened to be there in the first 2 games, and then in the third and fourth game they weren't, so they just decided to pull the plug. But they knew going into this offseason they wanted to upgrade a backup quarterback. It took them all offseason to do it, literally. And then when they did, they had a viable option to do it. If Thad Lewis is E.J. Manuel's backup quarterback at the start of the season, E.J. Manuel is probably still playing right now. So it was nice that they had Orton there, and it really is a win-now type of mentality. That's why they traded up for Sammy Watkins. That's why they put in Kyle Orton, and after 1 week, it worked. Yeah. Who knows if it's going to work the rest of the year. Now, at the end of the year, what's going to happen? Well, we don't know. It depends who's going to be the coach. If they bring in a new general manager or a new coach with a new owner, I think E.J. Manuel's gone. I mean, he might be around next year or the year after that, but he's not going to be looked at as the guy if they have a new general manager. That guy's probably going to want to bring in his own quarterback.
Right.
Just same thing's probably going to happen in New York with Geno Smith or somewhere else. So if the quarterback hasn't proved he's the guy and they bring in a new general manager and a new coach, it's really hard to make him the guy with a different head coach.
No, sure. And that's too bad because, I think the best way to do it in the NFL is to do the Aaron Rodgers approach. Like, you let the guy sit for a couple of years, you let him learn, let him figure the game out, instead of just throwing him into the fire. But I guess what are you going to do?
Well, tell Kevin Cobb's head that when he got his concussion or slipped on the stupid rain-soaked mat at St. John Fisher training camp. I mean, it really that was their plan. I really believe that was their plan, to bring him along slowly, to have Nate Hackett, in his ear all the time, have Kevin Cobb come in, start for however many games last year, even if it was just for the first half of the season until the bye week, or if it was the whole season. I don't know, the Carson Palmer approach. But right. I don't think that they wanted him to come in and play 16 games his rookie season, and they didn't have a whole lot of options by the time the season rolled around. I mean, you remember they tried out Matt Leinart, for the love of God. So that was the plan. It didn't come to fruition, and so maybe this is the chance to kind of go back and hit that reset button if that possibility still exists. Throw Kyle Orton there for the rest of the year, then in the offseason see what happens. Maybe E.J. Manuel learns to, I think, sling it a little bit more. I think that's what he said in his first media availability, that he wanted to do that, or chuck it more or something like that.
Well, one thing the Patriots are really good at is making mediocre quarterbacks look like superstars. So maybe you got that going for you this week. So that's a plus.
Go Kyle Orton.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've always liked him. He's a serviceable backup, and he got a win. I mean, granted, it was, how many field goals did they miss in Detroit? 3 or 4 field goals and 3 field goals. But hey, Jim Schwartz did what he had to do, I guess. He got his little victory carry and all that crap. Brandon Spikes, you guys happy with him? What do you guys think? I don't miss him at all personally. Great run stuffer, but I'm not sad he's gone. What's the general temperature of him?
He's certainly been entertaining on Twitter. I'll say that. I think he's played pretty well. His snap counts have been really all over the place as they've kind of tried to figure out where to go with him. Sometimes he'll be in the nickel packages. Sometimes he'll only play rundowns, and that's only through 5 games. So I'm interested to see what they're gonna do with him going forward. He played in the nickel last week against the Lions. I think that's more of something because of Kiko Alonso and Nigel Bradham both being out than it is they really want to see what he has as a nickel linebacker. He's better. He might be better at recognizing stuff than Preston Brown, who is pretty much drafted to be his replacement a year from now. So I've been happy. He's been what I expected. I mean, he's been exactly what I expected. He comes in, he gets some late hit penalties. He's made the defense much, much better at run stopping, or at least been part of what has made the Bills' defense better at run stopping. So he's been pretty much exactly what I've expected him to be.
Nice. That's good. He's always had this tendency. He's really good at anticipating the snap count for the quarterback and then charging to the wrong gap as the running back kind of blows right by him. He loves doing that, and I'm glad to see he's still keeping that up. Let's see what else. All right, so we got Sammy Watkins. He's your number 1 guy. Robert Woods, probably your number 2 guy, right?
Yep, so far. Mm-hmm.
All right. So, and then number 3 is Chandler. Who's your third receiver that you're comfortable with? Mike.
Well, it was Mike Williams until
Right.
this last week and it was a pretty strong. He was pretty strongly the third wide receiver through the first 4 games, and then this week some other guys started to steal snaps from him. Marquise Goodwin's really always been the kind of that fourth wide receiver that's been coming in to steal snaps and go over the top and things like that. But Chris Hogan, 7-Eleven, if you remember from. What was it? Hard Knocks with the Dolphins a few years ago. That guy. He's been on the Bills for the last year or so, and he actually stole some snaps from Mike Williams this week and had a couple catches. So I'm not sure why that was. Maybe it's because he's been working with Orton on the second team offense, or maybe it's just because they wanted to get a look at Chris Hogan. But it's definitely Sammy Watkins number 1, and if you saw the catch from the end of the game, you understand why.
Crazy. Amazing.
And it's been Robert Woods number 2. He's been playing with like a man on fire this year, a chip on his shoulder. And then it's been Mike Williams 3rd, and then Marquise Goodwin 4th, and then Scott Chandler. Actually, I'm doing a very big disservice to Fred Jackson saying this because he's been targeted more than anybody else on the entire team. And as you said before, between runs and passes, the guy is the Bills' offense. And for several games, he literally was the only thing going for the Bills' offense, whether it was through the air on some screen passes or swing passes. So really, Fred Jackson's the third option in the passing game if he's not number 2 or number 1. So.
And is I haven't seen too much Bills football other than the occasional highlight and the occasional kind of surfing through the channels and whatnot. But is it a fairly even back split between Jackson and Spiller? You said they're not really in the field at the same time that much anymore, which blows my mind. But they split in time pretty easily, trying to keep them fresh for the whole season.
They've never been on the field very often together. Chan Gailey, I remember saying specifically he didn't want to do that because then what happens if one of them gets hurt? Then all the plays you practiced are thrown out. I didn't particularly like that at the time, but what I think Chan Gailey was able to do was get C.J. Spiller the ball. Looking at the running back split, it's been Fred Jackson on 57% of the plays and C.J. Spiller on 42%. And the main reason for that discrepancy is Fred Jackson's ability to pass block. And he is much, much, much better than C.J. Spiller at that. And so when they're playing like the Dolphins and they have their rookie Chantrell Henderson going up against Cameron Wake, they're going to put Fred Jackson in to help chip that guy or to even pick him up if he gets past Henderson. And Spiller can't do that. So the vast majority of that is Jackson being better than Spiller at pass protection. For instance, against the Lions, Fred Jackson, 46 snaps, Spiller 25. For a long stretch of time, Spiller was benched because he completely whiffed on a pass protection and the fact that I think he ran for like 9 times for 7 yards in the game or something like that. I mean, it was an unbelievably poor performance from C.J. Spiller, and so I understand why those numbers are skewed. However, going back all the way, and it was the same split against the Chargers, by the way, when their Bills were down and they were in pass mode a lot. Now, against Chicago and Miami, it was much, much closer when they were in the lead for most of the game. Spiller actually had more snaps than Fred Jackson in the season opener against Chicago, but he was also running pretty well in the season opener against Chicago. And then every game since, it's been more Jackson, which, as you said before, it doesn't surprise anybody. The guy is ageless. I once wrote an article saying I don't think the Bills should give him a contract extension because the odds are against him. And I'm just one dude in the long line of guys that doubted Fred Jackson, and I'm never going to again. So. Sorry,
he sprained his ankle on Sunday, right? Is he all right? He's totally good to go.
Like yeah, he said after the game it was just a simple sprain. I mean, he was back in pass protecting on it late in the game on that game clinching drive at the end. So it couldn't have been hurting him that bad.
Sure.
It's not like the high ankle sprain that sidelined C.J. Spiller for a large portion of last year. It's something that he said after the game he should be good to go for Sunday.
Nice. And speaking of Sunday, so if you were the coach of the Bills, beating the Patriots is imperative. Really establish yourself AFC East, make a statement at home. New ownership, going to be a huge vibe, a lot of good things going on. Crowd's going to be crazy. What's your strategy? What do you want to do besides keep Brady off the field?
Well, personally, I'm trying to get those running backs involved as much as possible. But if I'm the Bills coach, I'm not running the same runs that they've been running so far. So that might be a little bit, tricky. I don't think it's a good plan for the Bills to be running as many pass plays as they have the last few weeks. 45 passes, 48 passes, things like that. That isn't their recipe for success. They need to go back to what they did the first couple weeks and balance it out a little bit. If I'm Jim Schwartz, he's probably the key to the game. You need to get the pressure on Brady, and you need to do it with 3 or 4 guys, which has been their MO all year. They haven't sent a whole lot of guys, except for when Phillip Rivers was carving them apart late in that, or I guess in the third quarter or second quarter. They started finally blitzing a couple guys, and so you would see 5 guys in pass rush. But getting pressure up the middle with Darius to move Brady out, off of his spot, even though he's really good at doing that. If you can move him off his spot into the waiting arms of Jerry Hughes, that's obviously the best case scenario for the Bills. And heckling that guy all day is the way to beat the Patriots.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think this is really going to be a good test for the offensive line for the Patriots. Buffalo front 4 is pretty nasty, even without Kyle Williams. Mm-hmm. And so you should be able to get pressure with 4, especially if it's more of a Kansas City O-line versus a Cincinnati O-line. I think this will be the good test because they're on the road. The snap count's going to be hard to hear. So this will be the good litmus test for them. I agree.
All right. Well, thank you a whole lot, Alec Sheen, for joining us this time. I'm glad we got to see your face this time instead of the blue floating head from the AFC East roundtable this offseason. We'll probably talk to you again at some point when the Bills come into New England looking to sew up the AFC East crown later this year. With Kyle Orton as their quarterback. Crazy stuff, right? Anyway, so thanks a lot, and I would say good luck this week, but I never wish it. By the way, I am abstaining from all Samuel Adams and Dunkin' Donuts and anything Boston baked beans, anything related to New England this weekend, and I encourage all of our viewers to do the same.
Well, I will not be abstaining from Buffalo wings because Buffalo wings are delicious, so I'm going to be housing those things all week. So you're a one-man operation in that respect.
We just call them chicken wings because we're in Buffalo.
Well, I'm not in Buffalo, so
true.
There you go.
But yeah, I'm going to Tim Hortons. I'm drinking. Well, I wish I could drink some good Buffalo beer, but I can't get to Buffalo to get it, so I've got to drink like Canadian beer because whatever.
Close enough.
Yeah, I guess. So anyway, that's what we're doing this week. So thanks again, Alec, and
thank you, man.
Go Bills. Bye.
Fail miserably.
Aw.